Hi, I'm Susan Evans from susanevans.org, and today I have a creative writing workshop for you called In the Trenches, Creative Writing for Modern History. Okay, so today I'm going to be showing you different things that you can do with your kids to bring to life the time period of modern history, which is one of those time periods that has a lot of kind of sad things in history, like World War I, World War II, Vietnam War. Modern history is one of those time periods that does not have a lot of hands-on activities in most curriculum. And for creative writing assignments, a lot of times kids have to write stuff that's very dry. So I'm going to give you alternative assignments that you can give your kids so that they will enjoy writing and have voice and write from their heart, and maybe writing even in a humorous way. Okay, so one of those ways that you can write in a fun way for modern history is to prepare for themed parties. Yes, okay, so for example, decade parties like the 1920s. So that's like the roaring 20s. So you study that time period. You watch documentaries about it. You read books about it, like The Great Gatsby, and then have the kids describe it as if they're there in preparation for a party. Okay, so uh, as a family, we had a lot of themed birthday parties, and it doesn't have to be a birthday party, it could just be a party in general. And you could do it with a group of teenagers, you can do it with a group of a co-op of all ages. So when we did the 1920s, for example, we did a Roaring Twenties party, and the kids were describing. This is some of the description that my daughter did. She says the Roaring Twenties was a time when lots of people were rich. The rich people would always be wasting money on parties. Men and women would wear fancy schmancy clothes and hats. Hats were all shapes and sizes. One of the hats looked more like half a ball of leather that's hollow on one side to fit your head. Flowers on hats were popular. Buckles were decorations on hats too. Men's hats were usually a top hat or a bowler hat. On men's suits, you might find a flower too. Jazz was popular. Some were called nonsense songs. I love the titles of some songs. One was called I Wish I Could Shimmy Like My Sister Kate. And another was called Oh, How Hard It Is to Get Up in the Morning. And many more funny names. Okay, so this is part of the creative writing assignment that my daughter did for this time period of the 1920s. So she's writing all this rich description with a fun kind of flair to her writing in preparation for her birthday party. And so we had a craft that we made, which was a 1920s headband with a feather, and it was really fun. And I have snippets of our 1920s themed party on my YouTube channel. Susan C. Evans is my YouTube channel. I'm Susan Evans Hands-On Learning, by the way, just in case I didn't mention that. Okay, so then as a family, and we invited friends, and we had a themed party about that decade. You can have it on other decades of the modern era. We did a 1950s party for my dad because my dad's favorite time period was the 1950s. And so we made a cake in the shape of an old-fashioned, like one of those that you crank. What are those things called? Well, you can see it on my blog. SusanEvans.org. If you click on the blog, then you can find 1950s and check it out and look at what we did we did themed cakes for each of these time periods. We did themed activities. We dressed up in that time period. Okay. Like, for example, the 1970s. We did one of the 1970s where I found at Goodwill around Halloween, I found 1970s clothing for our whole family. And a lot of the things were just 99 cents or $3 or whatever. We even found an afro wig that my husband wore, and he looked hilarious. So let's see. The 1970s. The 1970s was the disco age. Men had crazy hairstyles called afros, and then my kids went on to describe that time period. So the reason these creative writing assignments are so exciting is because you're going to have a fun party as a culmination of that decade or that time period. So when you have a culminating activity, like especially if it's a party where they can invite their friends, this is something that can make them excited about writing, and they want to nail that time period really well. Okay, so from the 1970s, we did a disco. We got a disco ball at Walmart of all things, and it was like $20 or something. So you don't have to have a disco ball. You can just have just whatever time period stuff that you can do. You can make some of the stuff yourself. You can, if you're good at sewing and have a sewing machine, you can add bell bottoms to some old pants. You just have it flare out at the bottom, and it's really fun. You can play time period music from that time period in the background of your party, and it could be super, super fun. We also did a party from the 1980s, and I have that one in my membership site under Modern History. So creative writing in the modern time period, one creative way to do it that I invented is to do themed decade parties, because I found so little hands-on stuff for modern history, and I wanted my kids to really enter into that time period and understand it. Okay, and to understand it, you have to be excited about it, and it's very difficult to be excited about something when you're just reading dry textbooks about it. Okay. All right. So field trips is a second way that you can do creative writing of assignments about modern history. Yes, it is a hands-on thing to go to on a field trip to places that exhibit modern era items or reenactments. For example, you can visit a submarine and go down into a submarine and experience that, and then write a description of that, the field trip. Now, if you have younger kids, and even if you have teenagers and high schoolers, you can, instead of just writing a paper, like, I don't know, you can see that. Okay, so you can write a paper. I had one of my younger kids added some photos to their assignment. So this was like when we went on a field trip to a submarine, and then so you could do your creative writing and add photos to your creative writing. You can just pull the photo when you're typing it up, pull the photo into the document, and then print it out. And so you have a very hands-on and alive thing that's very much more exciting, especially for younger kids. You can add photos to the field trips that you experienced. Now, when you go on a field trip, one of the things that makes it easier to do a creative writing assignment about the field trip is to take photos or to film some of it or all of it. This way, when they're trying to remember details to make the writing come more alive, then they can take a look at those photos that either they took or you took, or the video footage of the different things that they saw, so that they can be more descriptive um, uh, about that particular field trip. Now, you can go to see a battleship. We never did get to see a battleship, but that's one of the things that was on my list of places that we could go for modern history to experience something from the modern time period. Historic homes are another place that you can visit. um, Here in Spokane, Washington, we have a house that is from the turn of the century, from 1890 to 1900, the early 1900s. And so it is a historic home that is almost like a museum. In fact, it's attached to the museum. It's right beside it. And so it's all exactly like it used to be in that time period, with all the period furniture. And like once a month or every once in a while, they will have reenactments. And so they have a maid and a butler and all the different people, characters walking around the house. And so, and at Christmas time, they decorate it like at Christmas time, like a Victorian kind of a style. So this can be very exciting, and this is on the west side of the United States. The east side of the United States has even more historic homes, and it goes further back, maybe even 200 years rather than just 100 years. So you have a lot of historical places that you can visit in your city or in a nearby city. Okay, so you can look those up on Google from your specific city. We took a historic tour of our city here in Spokane as well, and then an antique train. We took an antique train tour. I filmed the antique train tour. That's also on our YouTube channel, Susan C. Evans. And let's see, we interviewed World War II or Vietnam War vets. And anyone who lived through, like now it's harder to find people who lived through the Great Depression. Back when my kids were a lot smaller, there were people who lived through the Great Depression who were still alive back then. And you could interview them and then write a creative writing assignment based on an interview with older family members or just people who have been to war and what the war was like and what it was like when they got back. There was a specific place that we went where there was a Vietnam War vet who, when he came back from the Vietnam War, how it felt and the rejection and everything, and he got all choked up, and it was, he was at the podium describing what it was like. And so it's a firsthand account of a modern time period thing. And so if the kids are writing about that, they are better able to internalize and experience what that time period was like. So that could be a very fun and interesting creative writing assignment. Now, so we have themed decade parties that is fun, that are fun to do, and to do a creative writing assignment around. You could do field trips, in which case that you can make it come alive. You can also, so in the field trips, let's see, let me give you an example of field trip. Like Campbell House was the turn of the century house. This is one of my sons wrote this. The Campbell family was very rich. Their house was the finest there was, expensive, ornately decorated and with cutting-edge technology. I know what you're thinking. Wait, where's the Wi-Fi? Where's the sports car? Where's the refrigerator? Let me explain. What I mean by cutting-edge technology is newfangled stuff like light bulbs, sewing machines, typewriters, dumbwaiters, and automobiles. So you see, uh, this student is writing with spunk, in an interesting way, in a humorous way, um, describes all the things in the house. Um, and so it could be very fun to write about that time period based on where you went and what you experienced there. Now, if you want, you can put yourself into that time period and write in a first-hand account. This is called historical fiction. Okay. Now, I have a creative writing product called Time Travel Writing Historical Fiction, and it is creative writing classes for kids that brings to life each time period. And I show you it's video classes online, and they make creative writing come alive for all these different time periods. So anyway, that's available on my website, susanevans.org. But okay, so what historical fiction is you put yourself into that time period as if you were there. Now, this can apply to the themed decade parties where you are, when you're describing that time period, you can pretend that you are in the 1920s. You can pretend that you're in the 1970s, or let's say a field trip, like the turn of the century historic house. What you can do is you can pretend that you're the maid or the butler or somebody, or the master of the house or one of the daughters or something like this. So then you can describe your life and what it was like back then as a first person account. Okay, so historical fiction can include letters from soldiers in the trenches. Okay, so this is where I got the title for this workshop, In the Trenches, writing creative writing for modern history, because my kids, some of my kids wanted to write about what it was like in the trenches, soldiers in the trenches, and then they also wrote. They wrote as if they were writing to a family member back home. Like one of them, let's see, World War I, trench warfare, to my wife at home, whom I may never see again. The sun rose into the sky, all was quiet. The sun revealed that the earth was full of cuts and gashes. They were trenches. I was in one of them. Looking around me, I could see bullets everywhere. The earth wasn't the only thing full of cuts and gashes. There was, I won't say. I looked out over no man's land. All over the ground, I saw the dead. Anything out there was smashed and broken. There was a barbed wire we had set up during the night to keep the enemies from charging into our trench. This was now a big tangled heap. From where I was, I could see the enemy trenches. I wondered if they had set up a big tangled heap of their own. Suddenly a shot was fired directly at my face. For half an hour, I watched the bullet get bigger and bigger and bigger, like a cow staring at an oncoming train. I just watched it. By the time it was so close, I could see that it had a smiley face printed on it. My brain screamed, "Melvin, you idiot, what are you doing?" I brought my head down into the trench, but not before the bullet cut a swath through my hair right next to the other swath of my hair from the same thing that happened yesterday. Everyone in my trench was jealous of my awesome haircut. Finally, I don't know what they're so jealous. Frankly, I don't know what they're so jealous of. One of these days it will be my face. I dread the smiley face bullet. I don't know why I signed up for this war. I don't know why we're having this war in the first place. When I enlisted, I didn't know what war was like. I didn't even know they made smiley face bullets. Oh well, another day, another haze of shells. Tomorrow will be my next eyeball fight with my arch nemesis. So anyway, um, People from inside the trench, how would they feel when they look up over and see enemy fire? Just the feeling of what it's like that you could be shot at any moment. The end of your life is very in in your consciousness, and so the things that truly matter in life probably come to the forefront. Um, okay, so also you could have humorous summaries of great modern novels. All right, so you could do themed decade parties, creative writing assignments around that, field trips that are turn of the century or even more modern, like submarines, battleships, historic tours of your city, antique trains, that kind of thing. Then you could do soldiers in the trenches or any other first-hand account from anyone from the modern time period. Um, and then fourth, humorous summaries. Okay, so they don't have to be humorous. This is just whoever, whatever their personality is of the student, can come out in a writing assignment. So, and it could be in a writing assignment that doesn't have to be necessarily a work of literature, because like in the Great Depression, um, my son was writing. The Great Depression was depressing. Before people were less depressed because it was the Roaring Twenties. Right up to the Great Depression, the stock market was doing ridiculously well. It was called the big bull market. Sure, the amount of dishonesty from some of the investors was somewhat depressing, the way they gave themselves so much money, but that wasn't as depressing as the Great Depression. It all started on Black Thursday when a big bunch of investors tried to sell their stock. Okay, so he's describing all that happened, but he's describing it in a way that is depressing, and he keeps saying everything was so depressing. And so it's kind of like this, like it's a drizzling rain, the whole theme kind of this paper. It describes it in a mood that sets the stage, that is the mood of that time period, because it was the Great Depression when people were struggling to survive. Now, The Hiding Place is a novel set during the Holocaust. And so this was well, it could be a book report, but it can also be something that can be described as almost like a first-hand account, or it could be described as a humorous kind of a thing. So once upon a time, there was a Beige. Don't even ask me what that means. In it lived a family called the Ten Booms. I don't know what's weirder, the name of the place they lived in or their last name. There was Corey and Betsy and father. Yes, that's his first name. They sold watches. Evidently, you can sell watches at this thing called a Beige. Everything was just great, except that German weirdo who punched old people. But then the Germans took over Poland and ruined everything. They confiscated the radios and telephones and gave people ration cards and smashed random places and took all the stuff and arrested Jews and gasping for air. Where was I? And so, um, he's describing what it was like. Okay, the Beige turned into a hiding place for Jews who didn't want to die. So he's describing what this thing is. Um, Anyways, and then later he's saying, Corey, you're in grave danger. Any minute now, German soldiers will barge into the Beige and search everywhere. You must warn the Jewish man who's coming at 4:30 and the Jewish mother with her baby who are coming at 6. You need to evacuate the Beige, Corey. I think they'll suspect that you're hiding Jews in your house. You need to get rid of all the fake ration cards and hide the radio. All this time, a German soldier was writing this down. So uh, little by little, you're describing. You can even use quotations to summarize some of what was said in a book to give it immediacy. You can also write in the present tense rather than the past tense. It gives it a lot more immediacy, as if you're there. That is, instead of saying he went, okay, he is there. Like the soldiers are coming and they're about to arrest us. We're rushing into the back room. We're being as quiet as we can. That kind of thing. So, so any of these ideas can help you to do creative writing for the modern time period, which is the hardest time period to write about because of um, the heavy topics like the Holocaust and world wars and the Great Depression and a lot of things like this. So I hope that I have given you some inspiration for your modern creative writing. I'm Susan Evans from susanevans.org. Thanks for watching.